Hello, welcome to Today in the News on Vanguard Live. I'm Damlola Ogunshaki. Here on Today in the News, we read and give in-depth analysis on some of the stories making waves across Nigeria. And this morning on the paper review, I'm starting with Vanguard. Vanguard is leading with INEC, yet to assure us on BVAS. That's coming from Tinubu. It declares, I have collected my original certificate. Says one of my opponents may not be Nigerian. Some Nigerians stage harass Tinubu out of London protest. Tinubu delegate Erufai Alake Edun to answer questions. Tinubu's Chatham House performance a disgrace. That's according to PDP campaign. On page 9, we have you must remain neutral. Buhari wants army. That can be seen on page 9 also. Body of benchers, NBA tackles Olanipekun, insists he must resign. Kidnappers of Ondo Monarch reduce ransom to 10 million naira. End one-man rule, Atiku begs Lagos voters. No intention to disrupt 2023 polls. That's coming from IPOP. You can see those stories on pages 7, 27, and 11. You lack moral basis to criticize Buhari. Lai Mohammed tells Atiku and PDP. Stories above, we have subsidy. We won't accept any full price hike. NLC saying that one. Oil theft. We didn't indict NNPC. That's coming from Navy. I won't abandon Oyetola's project. Adeleke saying that. You can see that on page 10. On page 19, weak export drags down Nigeria's trade balance by 86%. And lastly, on the front page of Vanguard newspaper on page 14, the big interview. Healthcare's shared responsibility by federal, state, and local government. That's coming from Ihanuri. And you can see that on page 14 of the Vanguard newspaper. Away from that, we move to the Punch newspaper. The Punch this morning is leading with Naira depreciation adds 9 trillion naira to foreign debt burden. As local currency weakens by 53%, external debt rises by 288%. Nigeria needs strong, productive economy, says economist. You can see that on page 11. Also on page 22, Nigeria project 1.8 million barrels of production May 2023. Nigerians with NIN rise to 92 million. You can see that on page 22. And lastly, on the front page of the Punch newspaper, Tinubu takes campaign to United Kingdom. Atiku train storms Lagos. Atiku appeals to Lagos voters. Tinubu accuses opponents of playing dirty politics. You can see that story on page 2. And let's move to The Nation. The Nation this morning is leading with Tinubu points way forward on power, security, and others. Erufai Wale Edun Gbajabia Mila Ayade Alake Beta Edun speak. You can see that story on page 4. Also, 130 billion naira sukuk loan to fix federal roads. You can see that on page 8. Stories above. Why I deserve a re-election by Governor Sanwo-Olu. You can see that on page 23. And lastly, on the front page of the Nation newspaper, we have Atiku. I will sell off refineries to raise $10 billion for SMEs. You can see that story on page 3 of the Nation newspaper. And let's see what the Guardian is leading with. Guardian is leading with 7 years after Buhari falters on 24 million jobs promise. NBS fails to release unemployment rates since 2020. Ngige's claim of 7 million jobs created unlikely. No honeymoon for who will take over from Buhari. That's coming from Ojo. Insecurity, COVID-19, others undermine effort to lift 100 million out of poverty. It will require 3 governments to clean up this administration's mess. You can see that on the front page, and it continues on page 6. INEC, elections can't be conducted in an atmosphere of violence. That can be seen on page 2. And lastly, on the front page of the Guardian newspaper, federal government decries opposition's downplaying of Buhari's achievements. That story can be seen on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. And that's all we have on the front pages of the dailies this morning. Join us after the break for the analysis. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Today in the News on Vanguard Live. I'm Damlola Ogunshaki. Joining me to analyze the front pages of dailies this morning is Mr. Dayo Akintobi. He's the publisher of Ilupeju Today Lekki today and Ikeja GRA today. Good morning, Mr. Dyer.
Good morning, Damilola. Good morning to all our viewers.
Yes, thank you for joining us. And this morning, almost all the front pages are leading with Tinubu's story. But first of all, let's start with this one where he talked about the BVAS. He said INEC is yet to assure Nigerians of the workability of the BVAS. What do you think about that?
INEC has said that BVAS is ready, is good to go, and they absolutely are going to use it in the 2023 elections. They've had an opportunity to test run it in two places. They used it in Ekiti in the elections earlier in the year. They also used it in Osun in the Osun elections. Now, reports coming in from the field say that BVAS worked well. At the end of the day, you're looking at things like electronic transmission of results from the polling booths, and you're looking at electronic collation, and BVAS is an accreditation system that helps to ensure that each voter is who he says he is and each voter casts only one vote. Problem, and this is what Tinubu is alluding to, is that there's a crisis in Osun State based on its election results. They are currently in court with the immediate past governor, Oyetola, challenging the victory of the current governor, Adeleke, based on what they call overvoting. So APC is holding the position that you use BVAS in the Osun election, but yet the results are showing that more people than were registered to vote actually voted. So Oyetola's entire case with the tribunal is based on the fact that BVAS failed, that BVAS was not able to inhibit or prohibit overvoting. So how can you now try to deploy it for national elections when on the test run it failed? INEC, of course, is standing by his gun and saying, you are claiming it failed. We're still in a court process. A verdict has not been given yet. But as far as INEC is concerned, BVAS is efficient, it's accurate, it reports exactly the situation as is, and they're going to use it for 2023. But of course, what Tinubu was alluding to is that the jury is still out, and that for something that's not been tried, tested, and proven, you shouldn't risk it in a high-stakes situation like the presidential election. That's what he was talking about.
But as a Nigerian, do you think BVAS should be used for the presidential election?
Well, when you look at the way of the world today and you see the role technology is playing, technology can be harnessed to the great advantage of humankind. That's the truth. I believe technology is harder to compromise than manual human intervention. There's always the possibility of human error. There's always the possibility of human beings being compromised. Technology is harder to compromise. It's not impossible, because remember all the allegations about Russian hackers during the American election. So it's not as if technology is 100% foolproof, but technology is harder to compromise. You have to really be in the upper echelons of computer knowledge to be able to breach the security systems that are put up within a technological system. So as a Nigerian, I think it's progress that we're getting to the point of using technology in the electoral process. I don't think we're up to the point where we can start voting electronically yet, but incrementally, small by small. So if what we're doing now is electronic transmission of voting, of vote results, and if what we're also doing is confirming people's identity, confirming people's registration, and confirming voters' votes using the BVAS, then it's a good entree into using technology in the electoral process. I think it's progress.
All right, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu surprised his audience when he, when he asked some of his loyalists to respond to questions posed to him. I mean, this is someone going for the seat, and people, try to listen to their to the person aspiring to be the president of the country, but he asked others to answer that question. What do you think about it?
A lot of people were not happy about that because they felt like this was an opportunity for him to sell his candidacy to the whole world. Because Chatham House is a think tank in the UK that focuses on intellectual discourse, and many people use it as an outlet by which to espouse their views and articulate their vision. And it's a global stage. The entire world was watching. And of course, Tinubu, the candidate, had a platform by which he could persuade those still sitting on the fence and persuade the world at large that not only is candidacy viable, but that he would also make an excellent president. So when he now delegated some of those questions to what he called members of his team, those who went with him, Nasser Rufai was there, former Governor Fayemi was there, Speaker Gbajabia Miller, Dele Alake. When he delegated some of the questions and passed them on to certain people to answer, there are two different schools of thought. Tinubu loyalists say that shows his ability to delegate. That when he becomes president, he knows how to give, because no one man has a monopoly on knowledge. So there's no president in the world who can do everything himself. He has to rely on his ministers, his cabinet, his aides, his special advisors. So they say that was him demonstrating presidential prowess, that he's very capable of delegating to competent people. But there's another school of thought that says, well, when you're president, yes, you can do that. But while you're still seeking the seat, people want to hear your views, not the views of those who surround you or your team. And that it was a golden opportunity that slipped through his fingers, or that maybe even showed us the fact that he will actually be a hands-off president and other people will be running the country, not him. So it depends on what side of the fence you are sitting on as to whether you thought it was a good strategy or a bad strategy. But one thing I can tell you is that it's unprecedented in the history of Chatham House or most other think tanks like that, that at a lecture that a person seeking office, even usually Chatham House is usually people who are already in power, who come there to talk about their country, their policies and things like that. But when candidates are afforded the opportunity to use it as a platform, they take advantage of that to sell their candidacy. So I don't think I'm aware that it has ever happened before in the history of not just Chatham House, but other policy think tanks like that, where somebody has come and given a lecture, and then during the question and answer session that follows, that he now passes off the questions to other people who came with him to the event. It's not, I think it's unprecedented, and it left a lot of people destabilized. But what I got out of it is simple. I got out of it the fact that it's another opportunity for Nigerians to assess the people who are putting themselves forward for presidency. So you ask yourself, do I want a man as president who passed up an opportunity to expose deeper the thinking of his mind as to how he would run the country? Some people will say, I'm okay with that. I like the fact that he can delegate. Others will say, no, I don't like that fact. So I think what happened yesterday has just given us greater information to help us make the right choice. So I've always espoused the fact that at the end of the day, it's down to us Nigerians. So every opportunity we get, whether the candidate takes advantage of it or not, it sends us a message.
I think that includes the Arise TV town hall that he missed, where he said, and he also gave his reasons. He said he does not do interviews because he does not want people to make money from him because he's a marketable individual.
Well, that marks a bit of arrogance, actually. Yes, that's a bit arrogant for him to have said. But yes, that his refusal to attend Arise is yet another added piece of information that Nigerians can put together as part of the composite that will help them to make their voting decisions. He says Arise is biased, he can't get a fair shake from Arise, and as a result, he's not going to go there. Who knows? Bottom line is the body language and the messaging he's sending across to the electorate gives us further ammunition to help us decide whether he's the right candidate for us or not. So I'm okay with everything that happens. What I don't want is for him to dig a hole in the ground and go and hide in there to 2023. Let him come out, let him accept, let him refuse, let him delegate, let him speak direct. All of these things are added little pieces that we will put together on election day and use to decide.
All right, we'll come back to talk about Tinubu. Let's move on to this one. NBA has again demanded the immediate resignation of the chairman of BOB, that's Chief Wole Olanipekun, following a claim by a leading partner in his chamber, Ms. Adekunbi, that he influenced judges to deliver a favorable judgment for his client in sensitive and highly political cases. What do you think about this?
Yeah, this is not good for the legal practice in Nigeria at all. It's quite murky because the body of benchers, which Wole Olanipekun heads, is the highest regulatory body of the legal profession in the country. They're the ones that do the call to bar. They're the ones that sanction errant lawyers. They're the ones that regulate the entire industry and make sure that ethics are followed, that the industry is free of corruption. So when the person who is at the top, who is the head of that agency, seeks to use his influence, because the letter, I read the letter written by an associate in his firm who was lobbying for a job with the Rivers State government. And what that letter said was that our principal, now in his capacity as a lawyer from his chambers, not in his capacity as chairman of board of benchers, but what that letter said was that our principal, Chief Wole Olanipekun, knows all the judges, has very strong influence, and has a history of winning cases because judges respect him and look up to him, and he has influence over them. So if you bring this case to us to handle for you, you have a very good chance of winning this case. Now, that compromises the integrity of the bar, because it's like you are selling influence. You are saying, give me your case and I will manipulate a victory on your behalf using my influence. So what the NBA is saying is that such a person who is ready to use the power of his position or the influence of his position as the chairperson of the regulator of that industry, there's a conflict of interest. He has no business being at the head of that agency and using his influence to shop judges for victories, and now using that to get clients. So they feel like this incident has maligned the integrity of the entire legal profession, because it now looks like you can buy judgments with influence. You can get clients by saying, look at my history, look at my position in the regulator, and believe that as the head regulator, I can get you judgments to suit your position. I can win a case for you. So bring your case to me, because I will use the influence of my position. So that muddies the whole water of what we call justice, because justice is supposed to be blind. The whole process of jurisprudence is a search for the truth. So when we litigate and we go to court, we are looking to find out what the truth of a matter is. So if you can use your influence to buy your own version of the truth, then justice is circumvented. So that's the problem. NBA says he should resign, that the deputy, which is retired Justice Odili, the wife of the former governor of Rivers, that she should take over. She is viewed as an impartial jurist. She's viewed as corruption-free. Because essentially they're saying, well, Olanipekun has tarnished his reputation. They don't now want him to tarnish the reputation of the bar. Because people will start saying, you can shop for judgment based on influence. Then that subverts justice.
All right, let's talk about the fuel. So 3 days after the federal government denied that it planned to hike the pump price of petrol, independent marketers, they've raised their price to 280 naira per litre. Meanwhile, NLC is saying that they won't accept any price hike. What do you think about this?
Well, there's fuel scarcity. We're also paying 280 naira at the pump now to 300 naira, even though the official price is, I think, 165 or somewhere or thereabouts. So effectively, the subsidy is already gone anyway. But what the NLC is saying is that they won't accept any official price hike, because, of course, once you remove the subsidy, estimates are that petrol price at the pump will be about 400 naira per litre if you remove the subsidy. So what NLC is saying is, look, the whole issue of subsidy is simply because we're not refining our own fuel. And that rather than talking about taking out the subsidy, once you start refining fuel, and we're able, in Nigeria, and we're able to save transportation costs, the cost will naturally find its own level. It won't be that 400 naira. That 400 naira is because you have shipping costs, you have import duties, you have demurrage at the ports, you have all kinds of added costs. But if we're refining locally, all those costs will come down, and petrol price will not be 400 naira even without the subsidy, because Nigerian government is saying we can't afford to continue to pay subsidy. Fine, we all recognize the fact that the government is broke, they don't have enough money to pay subsidy. But the Nigerian people deserve some sort of succor. You can't take out the subsidy without putting in cushioning measures in place. What NLC is saying is that the number one cushioning measure is to refine locally. If you refine locally, you can keep that price affordable for people to where our income will still be able to enable us to feed, to pay transportation and things like that, because the cost won't skyrocket through the roof. So NLC says they're going to resist any attempt by the government. Because remember, the government is caught between a rock and a hard place. It's saying, I can't afford the subsidy anymore, I have to take it off. Nigerians are saying, we can't afford to pay more than 165, so you can't take the subsidy off. NLC is saying, you can take the subsidy off by refining locally, the price will still stay the same. So you don't have to now say you are removing subsidy and price is going up. Just start refining locally. So spend money now on modular refineries, fix Kaduna refinery, fix Port Harcourt refinery, fix Warri refinery, hurry Dangote up to get his refinery going. There's small modular refineries being opened all over the country. Get those up and running. Once you get those up and running, subsidy becomes obsolete. That's what NLC is saying. NLC is saying, don't you dare go and increase the pump price without refining being in place and then put suffering on the heads of Nigerians. They won't accept that.
All right, what do you think about selling the refineries? I mean, Atiku said, he will sell refineries to fund SMEs.
Yes, I saw that. I saw the PDP rally at TBS yesterday, and the first thing that struck me was how empty the arena was. The crowd was quite scanty, and I felt that was symptomatic of the lethargy of the Atiku campaign up